Okay, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Garcia.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Marquis.
Here.
Myers. Sargent.
Here.
Sweeney Moran.
Here.
Zith.
Here.
Okay, would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge my allegiance to the
The
flag
flag of the United States of America
and to
and to
the
the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Thank you all for joining us again tonight in our virtual format. Hopefully we'll be in person very soon. That's our hope, now that our education center is also open, which took a long time after about a year of remodeling. And we'll start our meeting off, as always, with the superintendent's report. Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, Board President Marquis, members of the board. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone is staying nice and warm. Hard to believe the day after Labor Day, and we are being inundated by snow right now. And I know that everybody is really wishing we would have called a snow day, but everybody had to go to school today and tomorrow. So sorry about that, everyone, students. And we'll talk about the future of snow days once we're done with the pandemic. I don't know that we could put another topic on our agenda, but I know that's a conversation that I think is happening around social media and the future of snow days. We've had a great start to school, board members and public. Certainly some bumps in the road. I believe that the first couple of days we traded out the traffic that typically piles up in front of some of our schools for traffic on the information highway. Hopefully we have most of those bumps ironed out at this point. Working really hard, and just want to really just thank our teachers, our educators for the incredible job they're doing, our students, parents, everybody pulling together and making the best out of what is certainly not an ideal situation. Had a chance, board members, to visit many schools over the first couple of weeks of school, and was able to visit with teachers and leaders that are in buildings. Many of our teachers have opted actually to come to work each and every day to be teaching from their classrooms. And just their efforts and their creativity and their passion has been amazing. And so I just want to make sure that I say thank you to all of those that have worked so hard to make our first few weeks very, very successful. I will say, board members, I'm extremely excited for this evening's meeting, where you'll be hearing an update on our Phase 2 reintroduction plan, Phase 2 Plus. As board members and community, as you know, the working advisory group that we've established has been working tirelessly, putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours over the past several weeks to really figure out how can we get kids in person, and they're ahead of schedule. So you'll be hearing from them this evening, and very much looking forward to you hearing their recommendations and moving forward. To our public, I want to say thank you for staying engaged. Board members, as you know, public may not know, we're getting hundreds of emails every day and people sharing their thoughts and opinions. That's important. We really appreciate that. We continue to read those, helps us shape where we're headed. So please continue to stay engaged. I just want to thank our public for continuing to be involved on this topic, and understand that people's opinions on this are varied, and that's great that you continue to share those. It allows us to know and understand where our community sits as we go through challenges as we are right now with COVID-19. And so I want to keep it short, Superintendent's Comments short this evening, because I know we have a good amount of public comment today and a full agenda. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Board President Marquis, for any questions from the board.
Okay, board members, any questions? Nope. Okay, we'll save them all for later. Our next item is public participation. So as you're all familiar with now, we had to change the format of our public participation to accommodate the virtual meetings. People who wish to comment were asked to sign up with the board secretary, Laura Schaefer, and you can find that on the bbsd.org website if you go to the board page. And so there's a link there to connect with Laura and let her know that you're looking to speak. And then you'll be given a link and be put into a waiting room and then be able to speak virtually and share your comments and thoughts. Also, just a reminder that we do read all of our email, and we really do. So if you don't have enough time to say everything you want to say, or if you don't want to participate during any kind of live meeting, please, we really do encourage you to send emails to the board or to your principal or to the superintendent to share your concerns or your perspectives about what's happening in the district. For those who are speaking tonight, welcome and thank you. Please confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If you run out of time, as I mentioned, you can share additional information by sending an email to the board. Also recognize that students often attend our meetings. The remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade. Finally, you will see a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining. When you have 10 seconds, you will see an orange card, and those are what Laura is holding up there. I hope you can see her, that your gallery accommodates that. When you see the orange card, please wrap up your comments. At the end of your 2 minutes, your microphone will in fact be muted. So that's it. So we'll start with our first speaker this evening, and it is, excuse me, Nikki Smith.
Hello, board members. My name is Nikki Smith. I'm a senior at Fairview High School and the co-director of the BVSD chapter of Diversify Our Narrative. Diversify Our Narrative is a nationwide movement led by students with the mission of encouraging a productive dialogue on race and identity among student bodies through the inclusion of racially diverse and anti-racist texts in American schools. We believe that the first step towards anti-racist education in BVSD is the mandatory inclusion of at least one book by a person of color and about people of color in every high school English or language arts class. We also request that a voluntary task force composed of teachers be created to issue guidelines that ensure these texts are taught with proper tools to ensure racial sensitivity, perhaps as an extension of your new Equity Council. Our full list of demands can be found at diversifyournarrative.com, along with a list of recommended texts written by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC, authors. We are not alone in our desire for an anti-racist education. In the 5 weeks that this chapter has been operating, our petition has gained over 600 signatures from passionate BVSD students, teachers, parents, and alumni. What we all understand is that books are an important way that students learn about the world and other people's perspectives. They allow us to recognize each other's humanity. As Mallory Blackman said, reading is an exercise in empathy, an exercise in walking in someone else's shoes for a while. So then, what does it say to students when the top 10 books most frequently taught in English classes are all written by white authors and about white characters? High school students today are the next generation of voters, policemen, and politicians. It is essential that we consider what messages they are taking from their education and carrying into the rest of their lives. For these reasons, I urge you to take action and support this petition in mandating these demands. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, our next speaker is Chris Hespy. Is Chris here?
So Chris is using an old version of Zoom. So in order to allow him to speak, we need to promote him to a panelist. So just give us a moment.
Okay.
Chris, you should be able to speak now.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. My name is Chris Hespy. Thanks for taking time to listen tonight. I teach 7th grade humanities at Aspen Creek in K8 in Broomfield. I was asked by a former student of mine to speak to you about why I support the Diversify Our Narrative mission. And I first wanted to say I'm proud to work in a district that's listening to and valuing all of its stakeholders. And I'm even prouder to see that my former students, who are our most important stakeholders, are taking action today to make change in their world right now. I would also was also asked to provide how the mission would affect my experience in BVSD. What I wanted to say was that I've always seen BVSD as a leader in social justice reform and education, and I believe our students will find a partner in this initiative right away. What I hope our students in our community become more aware of is that the work being done around cultural relevance right now aligns with Dawn's initiatives to better serve all of our students. One thing I know is that while I've always felt supported as a teacher to address topics like these, it's very easy to fall into the trap of incomplete history and finding resources that are focused on one cultural perspective. Resources and curriculum available to teachers too often falls into this category and dangerously paints a narrative that often only our white students see themselves positively reflected in. And if we really want to address the achievement gap, we have to make education accessible to all of our students so that the story of America isn't only focused on white America. Every student in our classrooms needs to see that their story is just as much of part of the American story and that their ancestors were more than just victims in history books. In my opinion, this doesn't happen unless we provide teachers with resources and training that completes the narrative. And not only does this work start to address inadequacies for our minority students, I strongly feel it's the key to healing divide in our country. Now is our chance to listen to these students as they demand action, and I hope the task force working on cultural relevancy within the superintendent's strategic plan will embrace Dawn's mission and be supported from the highest level in locating and providing these resources. Thank you for your time.
Okay, our next speaker is Ray Zhao. Is Ray here? There we go. Ray, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Gao, and I am a Chinese American 10th grade student at Broomfield High School this year. I stand with DON's mission because we must introduce students to the importance of racial diversity because we are the future. Providing proper education regarding the topic of racism should be prioritized in order to reduce the stigma surrounding racial inequalities and to make students who are Black, Indigenous, people of color feel safer in their learning environments. Speaking in complete honesty, as a person of color, right now the Boulder Valley School District Language Arts curriculum is currently a bit disheartening. Throughout my 7 years of attending BVSD schools, we seldom read texts exploring the issues of BIPOC or texts written by BIPOC in our language arts classes. To speak from personal experience, the only time I read a book that had an Asian author was when I read Red Scarf Girl by Jili Zhang in 7th grade. Throughout that entire unit, I was repeatedly ridiculed by my peers and called racial slurs because I am Asian. As a non-white student at a BVSD school, the lack of teachings concerning racism and the struggles of BIPOC has made me feel unacknowledged in many classrooms. BVSD's curriculum personally affects me because I have been harassed at school by my peers countless times for my race. This is because they lack an understanding of why racism is wrong due to the absence of anti-racist teachings in their classes. Sadly, a lot of students will only ever read books that are required for their courses and will not take extra time to educate themselves on the topic of race. It is the school's duty to aid students in their journey of gaining more knowledge, and therefore the importance of anti-racism must be actively reinforced in classes. Thank you for taking time to listen to me.
Okay, Erin Hendrickson.
I do not see Aaron in our list of attendees.
Okay, just let me know if he comes back on so that we can bring him back in. Tahiti Balaji. My apologies if that's incorrect.
Sorry, my mic was muted.
No problem.
Fine. Hello, my name is Tahiti Balaji, and I am a sophomore at Monarch High School in Louisville, Colorado. Growing up in a suburb and going to mostly white schools, I've always been told to follow what my teachers were saying and believed that what they told me was fair and just. However, in light of recent events following Black Lives Matter, I've come to realize that the history that has been taught to me is misleading and leaves out key details. As an example, I never knew that Abraham Lincoln's agenda was more about preserving the Union and not about freeing slaves. In fact, freeing slaves was more so just a side effect of what happened after the Civil War. Furthermore, the only time Black history was mentioned was during MLK Jr. Day, where we spent a record 40 minutes discussing years of ridicule, racism, and injustice that Black people in this country continue to face. For these reasons, I support Dawn's agenda. Dawn is providing BVSD with a chance to be more inclusive with our curriculum. By providing books by POC authors and ensuring proper history is taught to kids, we can create a space where kids can have important conversations about race. As a brown kid growing up in white towns, I used to laugh at how people would think that I spoke Hindu or Indian. However, now I look at that as ignorance and a lack of education towards racial topics. I know that if we follow Dawn's initiative, kids will learn that their language is cruel, hateful, and wrong. If I have to hear another kid say the N-word down the hallway, they should and will be punished because they will know better. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and I hope you will choose to support Dawn's mission.
Okay, Jennifer Pagano.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Jenny Pagano, and my experience of the BVSD is threefold. One, as a faculty member, my father coached and taught for 32 years at Boulder High School and Fairview High School. Two, as a student, I attended in 1986 to 1988, as well with all of my other siblings in the 70s and 80s. Three, as a parent of two boys from 2012 to 2018 at Fairview High. Although I have always recognized BVSD as a primarily dominantly white community, the absence of people of color became exceedingly apparent upon the enrolling of my own children in the school system. As a white mother of young Black men, I had to consider what differences would skin color play in the experiences by navigating high school in Boulder. After further involvement as a coach/team mom for the football program, it gave me firsthand exposure into the world of my boys and of other Black and brown children. Learning of Dawn's mission, it is imperative for early education of this matter. Dawn's mission should be merely the tip of the iceberg regarding the inclusivity. Learning about the culture and racial diversity of our society is a stepping stone to achieving understanding the responsibilities of education, awareness, exposure, and activism rest with every single one of us. Thank you.
Okay, Allison Merlino. Is Allison here?
She is.
Okay.
Just see. I promoted her to panelist. Looks like you're muted, Allison.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay. Hello, my name is Allison Merlino. I'm a 9th grader at Broomfield High School and an organizer for DON BVSD. I have been in BVSD my entire life and can attest to the lack of diversity in our curriculum until lately with the forming of the Equity Council. Although some teachers have gone above the lack of diversity in our narrative to show us a broader scope of learning and literature, we should not be depending on these teachers to ensure we get a holistic education, and that is honestly representative of our country today and its literary history. In my school, I am around kids who don't understand the issues of many BIPOC face today. I sit with them in class and walk by them in the hallways. They say things no one, especially BIPOC, should have to hear. And although this will never be completely eradicated, we can work together to impact their lives through education. This starts with putting anti-racist text into our literature classrooms. There is so much ignorance in this world, and we can change that, at least in our small area, to create a better, brighter future for all, not just some. This is the time to act. So please support the request of Diversify Our Narrative BVSD. Thank you for your time.
Laurie Kinsel?
Laurie.
Hello,
We can hear you.
thank you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. Great job, BVSD kids, bringing this Diversify Our Narrative to the board. How brave. My name's Laurie. I have been a Spanish and cultural diversity teacher for many years at Netherland Middle Senior High School. I became a teacher because I wanted to help open young minds to ideas that they may not have had before, and to help them learn to critically think and to help make this world a better place. And now is the time for change in a positive direction. It's a teaching moment. Our students are watching what's happening in the world, and we need to join them to create a new way to work towards inclusivity and diversity. Our definition of diversity must be the inclusion of all voices, those in the room and those who aren't. We must leap forward from these ideas and bring their voices, all voices, into our classrooms. What better way to do this than through literacy? And Don is a great way to do this. Ta-Nehisi Coates said, when you don't have much exposure to the world, the options you see for yourself tend to be limited. You can't really dream about that which you do not know exists. And one way to see more of this is what is possible is through education. This program will be expansive for the whole community, for students who will have the opportunity to read the works and work with these texts, for the teachers to expand their knowledge of other voices, for parents who can discuss these ideas with their kids and their other kids as they're reading these books, and who knows what more can come from this kind of critical thought. I believe that this is a great start, and I sincerely hope that you'll consider this proposal. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and please take this as a beginning to what we can create as Boulder Valley School District. Thank you.
Eric Acosta?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yate Yenishe Eric. Hola, my name is Eric. I am an indigenous ancestors of the peoples of North America. I am a teacher at Boulder Prep High School. This is my first time teaching at a school like this. I've done, all my career has been in Indian country, whether that's urban or rural. So it's been interesting, to say the least. And I got an email from a young lady named Isabella, and I responded to her. And so I'm just going to read you my response to her courageous work real quick. Isabella, I think it's noble what you are doing. The students here at Boulder Prep High School are doing something similar and have created a group to talk about said issues. They call themselves Boxers for Being Good Relatives. They have all sent letters to Congressman Neguse to urge him to change the curriculum in schools to be more inclusive. He sent a representative to meet and accept the letters from our school. Two of the demands they asked for is an Indigenous Studies class and an Ethnic Studies class to be taught at Boulder schools. The eventual goal would be all schools everywhere, but that is where they're starting. They have several next steps coming up, and I would urge you to touch base with members of the group. I would like to put you in contact with them. With that said, and being an educator, as an Indigenous man, I must tell you a story. This country has become alarmingly black and white. We must remember that when we speak of injustices in this country and Indigenous people are not mentioned in the same breath, it's a travesty. Do you know Black Sambo is? If not, look it up, and then look to the Cleveland Indians and the Washington football team that many black and white athletes have played for. Yeah, the Washington team, they're changing their name now, but why? They had their change of heart or hit it to the wall. We talk about cops taking black people's lives, which is utterly disgusting. Whereas the talk about entire justice system, cops, local, state, federal, national, who turn their backs on missing, murdered Indigenous women. We live on stolen and occupied land, and wealth of non-Indians is wealth that is dirty and is stolen. We live on their homes with no acknowledgement of who they are or where they give up to what they give up to be here. You know, historically, the land your school and your family live on who that once belonged to and what happened to them. With that said, we win small battles like that of Bears Ears. We heard of it. Then Donald Trump and his administration come through and just like that take 80% of it away. Are you aware of suicide rates in Indian country, which are highest in Indian country? I tell you some of this because not a competition. I'm not interested in oppression Olympics. I'm just sick of hearing messages of inclusivity and struggles, and we rarely, if ever, acknowledge, if we are rarely or if ever acknowledged. You know, I see those 9/11 posters everywhere and they say never forget. You know, growing up Indigenous and Mexican, I was always told to forget. Get over it, you're a whip. Do you know Indigenous people have to prove who they are? They need a tribal ID and a certain blood quantum. You know of any other human in the world who has to do that? I know we do it to livestock. Did you know that 70+% of us live in cities? Do you know why? After years and years of trauma, and then you want to reconnect with your heritage and your people, but you can't because you don't have the right documentation or blood quantum.
Okay. And excuse again my pronunciation. Xiang He.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Xiang He. I'm a senior at Fairview High School. I'm honored to speak among these intelligent individuals who have unique views and experiences. I truly believe in Diversify Our Narrative because it is an initiative that is battling against racism at its core. Many of us believe that we are not racist because we are not hateful. We point to history and think, I don't view colored people as inferior beings. I don't tolerate the usage of racial slurs. I'm not racist. But the core of today's racism does not necessarily come from hate. For most people, good people, it comes from ignorance. Ignorance is insidious because it begs complacency and amplifies fear. And none of us are immune. America is less a melting pot and more an amalgamation of metal chunks of different cultures and identities. I know this firsthand because as a Chinese American, let's forget Asian, because when it comes to my family's closest friends, there are few that are not Chinese. Not many people have genuinely experienced diversity, much less cultural integration. That especially applies to Coloradans, where 87% of people are white. As humans, we have this amazing ability to sympathize and empathize with each other, but we also have the tendency to ignore things that we don't experience firsthand. That's why we need to rely on our education and more specifically our books, because they allow us to live in someone else's shoes. When we read, we become the protagonist. We begin to understand their hopes, their dreams, their pain, and their suffering. And we begin to recognize problems that we were too blind to see with our privilege. But most kids today only read what they are required to. And when the majority of the school curriculum has us walk in a white man's shoes, we remain oblivious. The students of today are the change of tomorrow. By diversifying our narrative, we are taking responsibility for our country and for our future. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa Hill.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Hill. My sisters and I are graduates of the Boulder Valley School District, and my daughters are current students. I want to begin by acknowledging the territory that I am currently living and working on is that of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes. I also want to thank each of you for your public service to our community. I believe that education is the most effective tool that we can use to dismantle the racism that exists and begin creating a more equitable society that will give all of our citizens the ability to thrive. While there are a long list of actions for us to take, I come before you today strongly supporting the efforts of your students to begin by diversifying our narrative. I implore you to support the requests of the petition before you. The ignorance that exists in our society to the facts surrounding the institutional racism in this country is mind-blowing and should not be tolerated. I believe that education that is actively anti-racist is our way out. As a white woman born into privilege, given the color of my skin and the access afforded to opportunity for my parents, it is my turn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It is my turn to use my power and my platform to speak up and speak out to the racial injustices that have and continue to occur. My friends of color are exhausted. They have been fighting for a very long time, and they are tired of being in the position of having to educate me and my white peers about racism. I have no doubt that some of my friends of color are saying, here we go again, fearful of everyone only paying attention for a little while. They have seen the focus on racism before, and it has lessened with time. We cannot allow that to happen again, and racism is not a problem for Black and brown people to solve alone. They can choose to join us and be a resource, but they have been leading this work for so long. It is time for white people to speak up and speak out. As Maya Angelou said, I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. The time is now. Please support the request of the Boulder Valley School District's student-led effort to diversify our narrative. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Okay, Kavya Chatham.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Kavya. I'm a sophomore at Broomfield High School and I am Diversify Our Narrative's other BVSD chapter director. During my 10 years as a Boulder Valley student, I have seen firsthand that hatred is learned. I have watched as some of my peers transitioned from willful ignorance to outright bigotry towards me and other minority students. The lack of diversity and silence in the face of racism that is found within the current curriculum only fuels this problem. As educators, you have the power to teach children to be accepting, to be kind, and to empower others. And as a South Asian BVSD student, I ask that you take this opportunity to support your BIPOC students. Show us through your actions that we are an important part of Boulder Valley School District. During my freshman year of high school, we read 4 books, all written by white men about white men. And as I enter my sophomore year, the pattern continues. While I don't believe that any BVSD faculty member purposefully enforces a Eurocentric curriculum that consistently leaves BIPOC students out of the narrative, it is clear that now more than ever BVSD needs change. Diversify Our Narrative is so excited to see all the initiatives the district has put into place to work towards equality. However, people of color are not a supplement. We should not have to force ourselves into a syllabus. We should not have to fight to see ourselves represented in our own education. I hope you will agree when I say that Boulder Valley should be a safe place for all people to learn, regardless of race. Furthermore, I hope you will support us in making this happen, one book at a time. We urge you to keep our mission in mind when voting on future material adaptions. Thank you for your consideration. We look forward to working with you.
Okay, and our last speaker is Tim Lawrence.
Hi, thanks for having us here. I'm a parent of a first and second grader at Meadowlark. I've just got a couple questions on what can we do to give teachers incentives to teach in person again? Can the school district give them a bonus, or is there some financial incentive? How can we as parents help support the teachers? Are there thermal scanners, or can we volunteer for temperature checks on the kids before school? My main goal is to support the kids receiving in-person learning. Children need cognitive learning, but we're also missing an element of social and emotional learning. Meadowlark, one of the BVSD's latest K-8s, teaches PBL, project-based learning. When the school was being established, BVSD interviewed businesses in the area to see what areas of improvement there are for hiring. Google said they were hiring some of the smartest, most educated people yet. However, they need improvement on the project-based teamwork, collaborative skills needed to succeed. We want to get back to collaborative learning safely. I will personally volunteer before and after school to help however I can. We don't want kids to get left behind. We, us parents, can help. Was lay out a plan on how we can support that. And I want to thank all the teachers and staff. You've all been amazing. We appreciate everything that you do. Go Mavs. Thanks.
Okay, so that concludes our public participation. Our next item is board comment, and we can start with Richard, if that's okay. Yes?
Thank you, thank you, Tina. I want to thank all of these wonderful students, and I believe there are a couple of teachers in there that spoke so eloquently on the whole issue of having more literature of BIPOC authors in our school system. I am so extremely proud to have heard these testimonies tonight. It just reinforces for me my belief that we have probably one of the best school districts in the state of Colorado, because we're producing people like the folks that spoke today from the heart with a lot of passion on this whole issue of anti-racism. And I strongly support all of what they said. And if we're going to do anything as a school district to create a better society, even though we live in a bubble called Boulder County, we needed to do it through education, and we needed to do it through recognizing the fact that we're lacking in some places in our curriculum. And I just want to thank them very, very much for their testimonies tonight. I also have a question, and I don't know whether the question should be, I guess it's for Rod. And my question is, I think it was a couple of years ago that we passed a state law in Colorado that requires school districts to begin a process of implementing curriculums that recognize and the contributions of BIPOC people in Colorado. And my question is, I know that we talked about it, and I'm wondering where we're at with that whole process today, and if we are able to speed that process up, because it's been a while since we talked about it, and it speaks, I guess, and the people that were testifying tonight really speak to that issue that for years we've had in our state constitution, that we should be teaching the history and cultures of our people of color in contributions. But it feels like we have it doesn't feel, I know that we haven't been doing a good job in that respect. And I believe that we really should make a big effort and make this a priority for our school system. And I believe it's also part of our strategic plan. So I just want to thank the folks that came and spoke tonight, because boy, it just pulled at my heartstrings, and one of the big reasons why I ran for the Board of Education here in our system in Boulder Valley. So thank you very much, folks.
Okay, Kathy.
I don't have much to add to what Richard said. I just want to give my sincere thanks to everybody who stepped forward to talk tonight. I have to say, it's been a while, but years ago when I look at the curriculum, I graduated from Boulder High 100 years ago, and I would see the same books being carried forward. And I know there's a whole rich history of books that we could be reading to introduce our students to different cultures and different experiences. So I'm really glad that you're bringing this forward, and I look forward to a partnership going forward. So thank you.
Okay, is Donna on the phone? Okay, I heard that she might have been able to call in. All right, Kitty.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go.
Hello. Sorry, I'm in really cold weather and spotty internet, but I did hear all of the students' comments, and I want to thank them for coming forward. I think they have very legitimate things to say and things that we need to hear as not only a school board, but State Board of Education and nationally. So thank you to the students and thank you to the parents for coming forward and letting us know about your concerns on getting back to in-person learning. I'm anxious to hear that presentation tonight as well. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Kitty.
So there's not too much to add, thanking the participants. I agree with everything Richard and Kathy said. I'm so glad you all spoke to us, and I'm so nice to hear from such eloquent students. It brought to mind a song from the movie, or not, the musical South Pacific, is "You Have to Be Taught," and you have to be taught to hate. And we don't need to teach people to hate. So thank you for bringing that up. Couple more things. I want to say welcome to Emily. I see that you're on the call today. And I just want to also thank our teachers for all the work they're doing in this time that is so much more work than they were doing before. I had a conversation yesterday with a high school teacher from Jefferson County, and he was going back, they were going back to school in person today. And he was telling me the amount of work it took. And he said he has 5 preps and 18 different sections. And he has to do all of that in person and online. And I know, you know, our teachers are doing the same thing. So just thank you for all your hard work. Is that it? That's it.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks so much to the Diversify the Narrative folks tonight. I think it would be difficult to add much to everything Richard had to say, but I just want to vocalize my support for everything you wrote to us about and called in to say today, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Okay, Stacy.
I don't have much to add either. Thanks to everyone who spoke and to the emails we continue to get. And I also want to thank the teachers for the hard work over the past few weeks. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll add some comments as well. Thank you so much to the students and teachers and the parent who also spoke about reopening this evening. And just in general, I did want to extend my thanks to the teachers and the staff of the district who over the last couple weeks have been able to commit incredible amounts of time and energy and creativity and perseverance in standing up an online program in what's a really difficult time when we're also balancing our own families, just the difficulties of the online learning itself and coming up with ways to make this work. So I know how hard everyone is working, and it's just been an incredible effort. I also wanted just to make a general comment that we read all of our emails, but we don't necessarily all respond to them. And I want to make sure that the community understands that it's not a lack of caring if 1 or 2 board members don't respond to an email. I've made that commitment as the president of the board, but it doesn't mean that any of the other 6 board members cares any less about the students, the staff, or the community. And I just think it's important just to share how dedicated this board is. We are volunteers, and we are each so committed to the students, the teachers, the parents, the community. I just want to reiterate that just because you didn't get a response from each of the 7 board members isn't an indication that that particular board member disagrees or doesn't care about your concern or perspective. The last piece is just about the diverse, fair narrative. I am so excited that there are so many young people who are getting together and advocating for what's such an important part about our education in teaching diversity, anti-racism. Richard, one of the things you mentioned was HB 191192 that was passed in 2019. It's a piece of legislation that was renewed and revised to include transgender populations as well as other minority groups in the teaching of civics. And it also required a meeting with the community by the school board, with the school board and the school district to come up with different ways that we could include minority perspectives and anti-discrimination, anti-racism within our curriculum for civics. We held that summit last fall. I believe Sam Messier led that summit. I was able to attend, and it was a wonderful, well-attended meeting, and that helped kick off some of our anti-discrimination, anti-racism, and inclusion efforts in the district. One of the requests of the diversity of our narrative is for the school board to take a mandate on the requirement of one book per class for the high school. So in our policy, and it's, if you're interested, it's policy IJ, we have delegated the selection of instructional materials to our staff. So we, as board members, vote on the curriculum, but the instructional materials we mostly delegate to staff. And one of the things that we did, and I'll just read you that the policy, I have some notes this evening, it says that, and this is something we actually revised in 2019 to include some of this language, because this has been on the minds of both the staff and the board for a couple of years now. Our policy states that our materials should realistically represent our pluralistic society and reflect the contributions made by all groups and their individual members. So that's the overall guidance the board adopted to give our staff when they're choosing instructional materials. I think it's important. It doesn't mean that we can't change it or that we might want to be more specific, but we did choose language that extends beyond the English curriculum into history, all of our subjects, and takes a broader view of the groups that we want to represent in our teaching. The other piece is that we, in our new strategic plan that the superintendent developed in the first year that he was here, we added several initiatives relating to equity, and one of those resulted in an instructional materials task force. And I'm sure all the board members are familiar with this, but for the public, I'll just reiterate that their defined goal is to ensure that the Boulder Valley School District has materials that create a more complex, positive, and authentic picture of the diverse lives of students and the diverse world of us all. They should be free of race-based discrimination and promote equity of all. So that's the mission of the group that's currently looking at our instructional materials. And I think it's so fortunate that we have the Diversify Our Narrative group coming up simultaneously so that they can help guide the work of the instructional materials task force and increase the richness of the materials, not only in English, but across all of the subjects that are being taught to our students. In terms of one of the other questions that was raised by Diversify Our Narrative is whether the board would specifically take action on a mandate around instructional materials. And I'm willing to have a discussion. I will share that in general, I think boards should stay out of the very specific selection of instructional materials. I will admit that when the Jefferson County Board of Education took issue with the lack of American exceptionalism in the AP US History curriculum, which was 4 or 5 years ago, it felt like an over-involvement of the board. And I will also, I'm also really concerned about the federal government's current investigation into the use of the 1619 project and whether that should be allowed in schools. I again feel that that's overreach. So I'm hesitant to issue mandates, and I'm very trusting of our staff to be able to create great instruction materials across all of our subject matters. And I feel that the guidance we gave, both in adopting the equity initiatives in the strategic plan and revising the language of the policy IJ concerning instructional materials, should help us get on our way to achieve the same goals as the Diversify Our Narrative. That is a really long answer, but it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. So I wanted to share some of my thoughts around that. So that's all I have for board comment. And so we are going to move on to our next item, which is update on Phase 2+. Rod?
Thanks, Tina. And Randy, if you pull up our presentation and share that with everyone so they can see that. Again, board members, as we're waiting for that, very excited to be presenting you an update on the work that's been happening in Phase 2+, that we'll be able to speak to you about this evening. To give you a quick overview, not only will we be talking about Phase 2+, but we also will be joined by Jeff Zayak and Dr. Urbina, along with several staff from Boulder County Public Health, to give folks an update on where we are in regards to local health data metrics and some of the work that we've been working on with Boulder County Public Health, along with St. Vrain Valley School District, to be able to really understand the health data and what are some of the metrics that not only Boulder County looks to use, Broomfield Public Health looks to use, but also other districts around the metro are using with their in consultation with their health departments. I will tell you this, board members, that BVSD is at its very best when we work together. And as we ran into issues and had to move from phase 3 to phase 1 to start the school year, I know that came with a lot of disappointment from folks throughout our district. We know the value of in-person learning. And I just want to commend our district for taking what I think is the very right approach. When this conflict hit us, we didn't try to spread apart. We tried to come together. And so we developed a working advisory group that was co-facilitated by Sam Messier, who's Area Superintendent for the Northwest Support Network, and with Terry Mulford, our president of BVEA, and brought together a group of 30 plus teachers, parents, school leaders to really wrestle with the many competing priorities that we're trying to sort through as we think about getting back to in-person learning. So as we say back together BVSD, we're really truly doing this together, and I'm very proud that is the case as we move forward. And so Randy, next slide. At this point, I believe I'm turning the presentation over to Sam Messier to talk a little bit about where we've been in phase 1 and to give you all an update on phase 2+. So with that, I will turn it over to Sam.
Thanks, Dr. Anderson. So phase 1 has been up and running for 2 weeks now, and we're extremely proud of the work by teachers and administrators to make this happen. Also very grateful to the families and students for their understanding and flexibility as we continue to operate in this all online environment. Next slide. We're seeing some of the system level improvements starting to have a positive impact on students and families. Some of those include common platforms, that is the move to Seesaw for grades K through 2 and Schoology for grades 3 through 12. The clear expectations around synchronous learning on Tuesday through Friday, we think have made it a more consistent experience for our kids across schools. And finally, the robust set of resources that we've provided for educators, we believe has been of great benefit. We know, however, that home learning is not ideal for many students for a variety of reasons, whether it's their internet access or whether students are juggling competing priorities during the day, such as providing childcare for younger siblings. So we're continuing to focus on improving the things we can control as we work to continue our plans to return some students to in-person learning. And I think, Dr. Anderson, I believe I kick it back to you for a couple of slides.
Thanks, Sam. And so board members, public, as we think about the additions to phase 2, that's what we're really talking about this evening in phase 2+, and how are we going to expand upon what was developed in phase 2 to better serve the needs of our schools, for our students and our community. Next slide. And again, I would just say that, this partnership of
Hello?
I think that Dr. Anderson may have froze.
Okay.
So I can pick it up from here.
He might be back.
Oh, there we go. But I think he's muted. Okay.
Oh, did I break out there?
You cut out for a little bit, Dr. Anderson.
Okay, I apologize. Sorry about that. Must be the snow or maybe just bad internet. Again, just want to make sure that we're honoring the process that we use. I'm very excited for the things that Sam will be speaking to. And so very excited to turn this back over to her to share with you all the details of phase 2+.
Thanks again. So I just want to start by saying how incredibly grateful I am for Terry Mulford's work as a co-facilitator of this process and for co-planning every step of the process with me. Through this collaboration, we were able to develop an initial proposal that we're presenting to you tonight that was supported by 85% of the working advisory group. And I feel confident that we can stand behind the recommendations that we're making with the confidence that teacher voices were present throughout. I also want to acknowledge the many hours that our teacher and parent working advisory group members spent in helping us get to this point, on top of their commitments as teachers and parents. And finally, I want to give a special shout out to Michaela Beaver, a parent and community member who volunteered countless hours serving as a thought partner to both me and Terry as we navigated this process. Next slide, please. We're pleased to be able to deliver some initial recommendations ahead of schedule based on our original timeline tonight. The recommendations we present tonight will go into effect on September 29th, and we will be bringing additional recommendations to you on September 22nd. Next slide. Our first recommendation, one I'm really excited about, is to allow schools to schedule outdoor activities with groups of students at all grade levels, starting on September 29th. The specific guidelines for these outdoor activities will be forthcoming, including details on the limit for group size. We know that some families will not be comfortable with students attending any in-person activities, even outdoors, so we're asking schools to keep that in mind and allow students to be excused from these activities if their families have safety concerns. We also know that transportation will be an issue for some students, and we're asking that our schools keep this in mind and provide alternative online activities for students who want to attend but cannot, either because of transportation issues or health concerns. And as always, we ask that students not schedule activities that conflict with cultural or religious holidays. Next slide, please. The working advisory group was united in our belief that students in grades pre-K through 2 should be one of our highest priorities for returning to in-person instruction, because students at this age are building the fundamental skills as learners that will serve as the foundation for all of their future learning. We also know that students in this age group require much more family support to successfully engage in online learning. Hence, we're proposing that students in grades K through 2 resume in-person learning on September 29th for 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday. These students would not be split into A and B cohorts, but they will be in typically sized classrooms with their classroom teacher for the majority of the day. Masks will be required for both students and staff. Activities like outdoor recess will still occur, but they'll be on a staggered schedule to avoid the mixing of cohorts. Next slide, please. Students in intensive programs were also identified as a high priority for in-person instruction. And as such, the students enrolled in Halcyon, which is our day treatment program, our ILCs, our ICANN programs, our RISE and AIM programs, which are our programs for students with autism, and our transitions program will all start in-person instruction September 29th. For students in grades K through 2 that are participating in these programs, they will participate in person 4 days per week, while students in grades 3 through 12 will participate 2 days per week in person and 2 days per week online. Next slide, please. In addition to these, we're happy to be able to announce some return to in-person for our Boulder Tech campus. The unique nature of the Boulder Tech campus made it a good candidate to return for in-person, and they'll be doing so 2 days a week in cohorts. Also, 2 of our mountain schools will return to 4 days of in-person learning for all students grades K through 5 on September 29th. For all students, we recognize that some families might not be comfortable sending their children back for in-person, and we want to make it clear that online learning is still an option for them. And now I'm going to hand it off to Rob Price to talk about some of the safety measures that we're implementing.
Thank you, Sam. We're approaching our reopening with a layered strategy to keep students and staff safe and healthy, where many interventions and strategies are combined. So this isn't something we've been implementing these during our school-age care programs and our athletics, which have proved successful to date. So no one strategy alone will limit the transmission of this disease. So the layered approach for reopening includes stuff that Sam just mentioned: staying home when sick, cohorting of students to minimize the potential of exposure, maximizing distance to slow the transmission of the disease, Use of face coverings for all grade levels, frequent hand washing, increased cleaning of frequently touched surfaces and cleaning in between groups of students, and using our outdoor classrooms, as Sam mentioned, as much as possible and when weather allows. Next slide. So proper operation of our heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems is another layer to providing a healthy and safe environment. This is one that has gotten a lot of traction, a lot of emails and questions around our ventilation system. So we've been working closely with our indoor air quality consultants, which consists of the University of Tulsa, Dr. Richard Shaughnessy, and the University of Colorado. We've also hired a consultant, McKinstry Consulting Services, and we've also consulted several of our peer school districts in developing our ventilation strategy. So we recognize the guidance provided by the EPA, American Society of Heating and Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, and Harvard University. So specifically for HVAC systems, the layered strategy includes the following. Buildings will be flushed with 100% outside air 2 hours prior to staff coming into the buildings and 1 hour after occupancy. Ventilation will be increased above ASHRAE guidelines to maximize the circulation of outdoor air to dilute any contaminants that are inside the building. Filters will be continued to be replaced on a regular basis. Portable HEPA filtering devices have been purchased for isolation rooms and our health rooms. And we will continue to monitor systems on an ongoing basis to ensure proper performance. And then we'll also continue to provide guidance and encouragement to move classrooms outside when weather allows. Next slide. So our security team has been busy installing signage to encourage, inform, and educate everyone that's coming into our buildings on our health protocols to help stop the spread of COVID-19. We expect all signage to be installed in the next few weeks prior to students returning on the 29th. So at this time, I will turn it over to Stephanie Farron, our Director of Health Services.
Thank you, Rob. And I'm here to speak a little bit about what we'll be doing, that multi-pronged approach to ensure that students and staff are healthy when they come to school. As you know, we have been having activities on campus in our childcare programs and some athletics, and we've done a really wonderful job with those screening and being able to manage COVID-19 and keeping it out of our schools. So when students start to return back to in-person learning and to other activities on site, we will make sure that everyone is using our BVSD Daily Health Check, which is a COVID screening tool specifically for students in Infinite Campus. All students and staff are required to follow all of the health precautions like Rob Price mentioned. First one, if you're sick, please stay home, wearing a mask at all times inside, maintaining a 6 feet distance as much as possible, washing hands, using sanitizer, and practicing good respiratory etiquette. We've also have a really wonderful partnership with Boulder County Public Health. They have a team of epidemiologists and contact tracers who are there to assist us. So whenever we have a case that we suspect might be a case of COVID-19 or a confirmed case, we work with them to make sure that we are identifying everybody who's been in contact and are able to alert them immediately and quarantine folks when we need to. Next slide. As we will continue to monitor, as you saw on that slide, obviously, and you'll hear from Public Health a little bit later on, how the conditions in our community are changing, and we will respond directly to that. When it comes to actually looking at cases of COVID-19 in schools, we're following CDPHE's outbreak guidance. If we have a single confirmed case that's diagnosed with a PCR test, whoever is confirmed is isolated at home for usually at least 10 days. And anybody who is close contact are quarantined for 14 days. And that would be anybody in the classroom or in the cohort. If we have a cohort or staff confirmed outbreak, that's really 2 or more confirmed cases within 14 days in separate households. And in that instance, we would have to quarantine or exclude each one of those cohorts or classrooms for the 14 days, as well as the person or people who are sick would be isolated at home. A suspected outbreak could potentially be thought of as one confirmed case with more folks that are sick within 14 days with COVID-like symptoms, or a single case in multiple classrooms, or we're also looking at a 10% absenteeism rate across school in staff and students. And we're able to monitor that through the use of the screening tools that we've developed for students, staff, and visitors to our schools, and using our data warehouse VizLab. So we can look at our entire school and our entire district at one broad scope, which is really wonderful for us. And then if we have a confirmed school outbreak, that would be 3 or more outbreak classrooms or cohorts. And considering the potential to close school if that was happening, unless that we were able to really maintain those cohorts very closely and completely, and not have other folks outside of those classrooms being exposed. Next slide. Some considerations that we think about when we're looking at the health and safety is if we have somebody who is COVID positive in a family, siblings would be considered close contacts, and they would need to quarantine for 14 days also. We are working very closely, like I mentioned, with Boulder County and with the state CDPHE, looking at complex guidelines to determine when COVID-like illnesses such as flu and allergies and colds, when those might be suspected versus probable COVID illness. And we have some algorithms and guidelines that we follow to determine. Right now, what we're really looking at is any kind of new or worsening symptoms in students that would be coming to school versus something that's expected. And as you all know, especially with the smoke that we've been having and some of the high pollen counts, allergies are really intense for a lot of folks. So if symptoms are typical and we expect those symptoms to be occurring with the season or with what's happening in our community, then those folks would be allowed to come to school. We're really looking at symptoms that might be something out of the unusual. And then anybody that is home for a screening or is sent home due to illness will be followed up by a school nurse in anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, depending on the types of symptoms. And we've been doing these screenings now with our childcare and with athletics, and we've had a really good success rate. We've been able to follow up very closely with folks and have done a really good job. So thanks, everybody. And I believe I'm turning this over to Boulder County now.
I've got one more slide.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Stephanie. So just wanted to give you all the word that the working advisory group is continuing to meet because our work is not done. So the early childhood education department will be working on a plan to phase in pre-K shortly after September 29th. They just need a brief window to be able to phase some of their staff that's been helping out in childcare back into pre-K so that they can launch that shortly after we get our K2 kids back. We'll also be continuing to plan what in-person opportunities could look like for grades 3 through 12, and are still working on ideas for innovative solutions that we might pilot at small scale, such as, for instance, a mobile classroom. In addition, we're going to keep working on ways to improve home learning, especially knowing that many of our families will still be choosing that option. And now I believe I will hand it over to either Dr. Anderson or Boulder County Public Health.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much. Rob, do you want me to just jump right in?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sam, and thanks, board members, for having me back again. I just want to start by saying that we have been working, as Rob stated and Stephanie stated, really closely with Boulder Valley School District and St. Vrain Valley School District on all these back to school plans. Really appreciate the commitment and partnership that we've had. Also want to state that the Metro Denver Partnership for Health, which is 6-county region in the metro area, has put a lot of the things that I'm going to reference here relative to guidelines into place with the intention of having kids get back to school and reducing risk as much as we possibly can. We know that kids are losing lots of time by not being in person. So I just want to reinforce that message. I think it's really important, and I know that you're all focused on that as well. With that being said, I want to make sure that as we go through these, I want you to know that we have a total of 5 measures, and you can go to the next slide now. We have a total of 5 measures, and 3 of those, the first 3 I'm going to show you, are consistent with what you'll see across the Metro Denver Partnership area. And that includes, as Rob had noted, multiple school districts across that same area in partnership with public health directors to really try to plan together for reduced risk as we go back to school. These are the first 2 measures, and the top 3 measures are the ones that are consistent. I'm going to reference 2 measures at the end that are additional measures that we're paying attention to. And I believe we will be coming back to you in a couple weeks with a final version of this. I do want to say that we had started this conversation with St. Vrain Valley School District a few weeks back after we had finalized this guidance, and that Rob has joined us and really helped us make sure that we were all focused in the same direction. So I want to thank Don Haddad and Rob for, again, the great partnership that we've had throughout this entire thing. That first metric is a 14-day case rate, and it's per 100,000. And we believe this is one of the best measures to measure community transmission and to understand what's going on in our community. There is 3 different levels. So the case rates per 100,000 that are less than 50, that we said would be we could do in person with that level. And in each of these areas, we said in person or hybrid as an example. And then for the 50 to 100, we said hybrid or remote. But when we're above 100 cases per 100,000 people in the last 14 days, then we're recommending a remote approach to school. The second area that we've been looking at is trending case rates for the past 2 weeks. And this is important because it helps us tell if cases are increasing or decreasing. So we know what's going on in the community. Obviously, if we have high case rates with increasing cases over the past 2 weeks, then we have to be thinking cautiously about how we step forward. Next slide. And the third measure that's consistent across the metro region is percent positivity for testing. And there's 3 different levels here. Let me just explain what percent positivity for testing is. This is basically if we are 5% or less at a state level, that's what you hear the governor talking about a lot for a target of wanting to be testing enough people so that you know how the spread of the disease is occurring in our community. Once we start to get into areas that are above 7%, then we know that we are likely in an outbreak situation and we're not testing enough people and we are likely spreading the disease faster than we can get a handle on. So these numbers, without going into a lot of the background, really just help us say, oh, we're doing well here in terms of testing. We feel like we're catching all the folks in our community who are symptomatic, which helps us then assure that we can control the spread of the disease. When we get higher, there's less ability for us to do that. So if you think back to Florida at one point in the outbreak a month and a half ago or so, they were up into the double digits, 23, 24%. Really hard to control an outbreak at that level. Next slide. This measure and the next measure are additional measures that we're looking at. And this is trend in case rates for 5 to 19-year-olds. So we consider this school age kids over the past 2 weeks. And again, what we want to see here is what does the actual trend look like for the last 2 weeks? And is that trend increasing or decreasing? It's an additional picture at this age group to tell us if we see something happening in schools that we really need to be paying attention to. And the last slide. This is basically a Boulder County public health measure, and it's assigned by the state, and the measure is that we can complete at least 85% of our assigned cases within 24-hour period. And that's a measure that's required by the state, so that if we had lots of outbreaks across the state, that each county would have the ability to handle their own outbreak to the maximum extent possible without tasking a lot of additional state resources. And if we get way below this number, so if we're less than a 40% level, then we're down into not being able to effectively control a case. And just so you all have a sense of what this means, for every positive case, it takes 2 to 3 hours to do a case investigation. And then for every positive case, there's an average of 4 to 5 people that are potential contacts of that case that could become exposed. And each of those 4 to 5 contacts take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to investigate. So the reason why we want to be able to do so many quick follow-ups with such a high percentage is so we can effectively control the spread of that disease. And that's one of the key responsibilities of public health. So those 2 additional measures, those 3 primary measures that we had talked about, are what we've been talking with the superintendents about, and what we will likely make recommendations on relative to whether we are recommending a in-person, a hybrid, or a fully remote model as we move forward. And I'm going to stop there.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you, Sam, for the great presentation. Just to wrap up, board members, again, we're very excited to be moving forward. I want to thank everybody who served on our Phase 2+ committee for all of their work and moving us ahead of schedule. Parents, kids, we certainly have been hearing you. We know and understand the importance of in-person learning, and we're working very hard to make sure that we make this a reality. I would think that I would end this by board members by saying that I'm very confident in this approach for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we know that the districts surrounding us that have gone back in this type of model have seen a great deal of success. Yes, there have been students have been quarantined and isolated, but there haven't been outbreaks. You haven't seen huge transmission within schools for adults or for kids. And secondly, the work we've been doing here in Boulder Valley Schools with not only the athletics, but with also our childcare, we've seen great success and feel that we have the ability and the strategies in place to manage this well, to bring kids and adults back into buildings safely. So with that, I will pause, and I know that Dr. Avina and Jeff are still on the line and can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again for accelerating this process. I know it took a Herculean effort to get us here earlier than expected, but I'm also sure there are lots of questions. So Richard, do you mind if I start with you again?
Thanks again, Tina. Yeah, that was a pretty comprehensive presentation, and it looks good. And I think a lot of people are going to be happy with that. Maybe some won't, but at least we're moving in the right direction. I have just a couple of questions, and I know that we're going to be hearing again at the next board meeting as it relates to maybe other issues that may arise from the advisory group. But let me ask a question as it relates to that I didn't hear, and I know I did speak with Dr. Anderson about this. The children that are behind now, I'm talking about those gap kids that we usually refer to. Is an effort going to be made to make sure that those particular kids get some in-person learning? I know that we're looking at K2 for 4 days a week, but some of those kids could be at the upper grade levels in terms of, and they're still behind. So that's one question. And then the other one is, is the staff and families, are they still going to get the same childcare options that they had before, or is that going to change with Phase 2+ So that's my second question. So that's all I have for now.
Thanks so much, Richard. And I'd ask Sam maybe to help us out on how we are prioritizing students at risk, Richard, behind, need extra supports, how we're prioritizing them as we start to bring students back. And then maybe touch a little bit on childcare as well. Sam, if you could do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pass that off to Area Superintendent Robin Fernandez to address, since she's been working with that team.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Messier. I'm happy to talk about that. So we do know that even before COVID arrived, there were some students behind. And we know that despite all of our efforts, that some students continue to be behind, and perhaps even more so now. And so we've been talking together for a very long time about MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support. And what we are currently working on, not only for students that will soon be returning in person with us, but also students that will continue virtually. We actually just last week at our leadership meeting, our monthly PK-12 meeting, rolled out a whole process of what it is to make sure that we understand for every student in every grade level what MTSS means in the virtual environment. How is it that we are assessing student skills? And we are actually currently in the process of collecting assessment data to know where every student is in their academic growth and their academic mastery at this point. And we went through a very detailed plan that builds on our MTSS processes that we have in place at every building in our normal environment. But then we talked about what that means with both our building level staff and our district level staff in continuing, but also improving and strengthening our MTSS process virtually. So what I can tell you is that those processes are in place. We are combining what we have in terms of MTSS with our engagement processes. You'll remember those from last spring, that we were talking about making sure first and foremost that students are able to engage, that they have both the organizational, the connectivity, and the relational support to be able to engage with their teachers, that their teachers are working with them and their families directly, but then also we are working on intervention. And so intervention support from their teachers, from other interventionists at the school, but also from other related staff, both with the engagement team, but also staff in their schools.
Thanks, Robin. And then Sam, can you touch base on childcare as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So because the students coming back in person will be grades K through 2, we don't believe that there'll be a significant enough impact to use of the spaces in the building that it would prevent us from running childcare services. So space should not be an issue for us to continue to run childcare. The only issue may be that we're going to have to start transitioning some of the paras that have been supporting childcare back to our pre-K programs so that they can support that. But we'll be phasing that gradually so that we're able to continue to provide childcare for those families that need it.
Thanks, Sam. And just a great opportunity to recognize our paraprofessionals who are just incredible educators, have been flexible, wonderful working with us during this time, have stepped in to do childcare, and will transition back as it's just a really important part of the education experience for kids. So just wanted to take this opportunity to thank them as well.
Okay, Kathy.
Thank you for all this hard work. It's really exciting that we're moving up our timeline a little bit. So I just have a couple questions. We are not going to be providing busing to any of the students, is that right?
Actually, we will. So we'll be providing busing for those students in the intensive programs.
Okay.
And
but not the K through 2?
We will provide the transportation for students, qualified students who had already opted into transportation. And Rob, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you are correct. We're right now, we're reserving busing for special education students, Kathy, and then K through 2, transportation eligible K through 2 who have opted in. If you remember, we started that opt-in program this year.
And then we'll also be providing lunch at the schools, right, for them?
That is correct.
I haven't heard of this issue in Boulder, but I just want to make sure that there's enough testing and getting results quickly enough that we, when people need to get a test, that they get their results back quickly enough that we can respond in a way that's timely. I haven't heard that as an issue, but I just want to verify that.
Rob, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. And I'll defer to Chris here too. Dr. Urbina is helping lead with the testing, but we do not have issues with testing here. There was a point at which I presented to you before, and there was delays up to 7 or more days. We are not seeing those delays anymore. The state has been reporting that it's 3 days or less, and that includes their contract labs that they use as backup as well. I also know that that Dr. Anderson was talking about testing internally as well, and that is through a separate organization that also, I believe, guarantees less than a 3-day turnaround.
So you don't need to have symptoms to be tested, is that right? You can just, what are there certain screeners before you can be tested, or can anybody get tested and get the results in 2 to 3 days?
Kathy, I can answer that. This is Chris Urbina. That's a good question. Boulder has enough testing to get people that and I sound a little bit like a federal government official here, but please bear with me. We're prioritizing tests for symptomatic people and people who have contacts. We're also prioritizing people with chronic medical conditions, people over the age of 65, people living with homelessness, people who live in congregate shelters, as well as people who live in long-term care facilities, as well as assisted living. So that's really our target. Having said all that, people can still get testing, but those are our priorities. And so I think that's where we're going to continue to focus. I think in the future, there will be more point of care that is and quicker testing that may be 15 to 30 minutes. Some of the antigen testing that's coming out is going to be a little faster, maybe not as accurate, but it will be faster. So I do think that it's not an issue, or it's less of an issue that Jeff alluded to before. And we're starting to expand some of that testing to some of our community sites to reach those underserved populations as well, particularly in Longmont and other areas. So we are heading in the right direction at last. So.
And Rob, are we working with the Gary Foundation? I mean, is there a cost to our staff and to families who might not be able to afford the testing? How is that working so that cost isn't a barrier to getting testing?
So I can speak to the agreement with Gary Community Investments. We're finalizing that as we move forward. Hopefully have that finalized by the end of the week. In regards to student testing, that only includes staff and employee. That does not include student testing. And so I defer to Jeff or Dr. Urbina in regards to students who need testing, but maybe the cost is getting in the way. What are the community resources there where we can support those students?
Do you want me to, I'll just do a quick follow-up on that. So in terms of student testing, we are not doing testing of students unless they have symptoms. And then we do have testing facilities throughout the county that can run those tests. We are working, as Dr. Urbina just said, to get some more free testing in the community. We're working with the county to be able to do that through using some of our DOLA funds, but that is not in place yet. And Chris, I'll defer to you to if there's any free testing sites currently set up in the county for us.
Well, that's certainly a need that we need to address, and we're looking at it very carefully. The issue is obviously supplies and testing, so we're really looking at that very carefully.
What's an average cost of a test if a student needed to have a test?
It varies where you get it and whether or not they charge essentially a service fee. It could be anywhere between $50 and $100. That's why we have to reduce that. We're working with some of our community health centers, particularly Clinica, Salud, as well as BCH, to try to expand some of their testing as well.
And then I know we've got the flu season coming up. What kind of effort do we have to make sure that we get is there going to be, and when you look out kind of 60 days, will there be enough flu vaccine for those who want it? And what efforts are we making to make sure that that's available to people?
Jeff, do you mind if I take this one?
Go ahead.
We actually finalized our flu plan today at Boulder County Public Health, working with our partners out in our community. All the healthcare systems are now rolling out their flu plans. We had a big meeting today with all the health systems called our CIDR team, and they all have plans in place. The long-term care facilities have plans in place. CU Boulder has a plan in place. Everybody is working on expanding, trying to address your exact question. We're all concerned with the simultaneous prevalence of flu while we're having a COVID outbreak. So by gearing up and pushing our flu vaccine clinics, as well as working with our partners to make sure people have access to it, hopefully we'll get everybody immunized, or at least those who want to be immunized. That's is always a challenge, as you know, in Boulder. But we will continue to encourage people to get immunized so that we can reduce the spread of influenza at the same time we're getting COVID. So we're fairly confident we're going to have access to enough flu vaccine.
So Rob, I think what I heard was Heritage High School had to close down, not because of an outbreak, but because they didn't have enough subs to cover the staff that had to go out. Do you feel like we have a reasonable number of subs to, I mean, I think it's pretty certain that we will have outbreaks. But what are we doing to try to ensure that we have subs so that the whole school doesn't have to close down?
It's a great question, Kathy. And I know that Mike Rados has been working on a plan to make sure that we still have our substitutes available. Mike, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, great question, Kathy. And what we've done so far, since we're now headed down to phase 2, we've surveyed our substitute teachers who want to work. And so we've gotten around 200 that definitely are willing to work. And then what we will do is assign them to a building and possibly 1 or 2, so that they will be ready to go. And so we'll also start training them, not only that in person, but we're also going to do some training on virtual. So Melissa Riberty, Denise Ilson, myself have been working on that plan. So we hope to have within the next week who those substitutes will be and where they'll get assigned.
Sorry, I have so many questions. I just have 2 more questions. I thought that Sam said that there are not going to be cohorts in the elementary school, but then everything talks about cohorts. Did I misunderstand that?
I can clarify that, Kathy. We just won't be splitting a regular sized class into cohorts that are half the size of the class. So in some of our previous models where we had some students going Tuesday, Wednesday, and other students going in person on Thursday, Friday, we would have had half the kids in at a time. We're actually going to have all the kids in the class with their classroom teacher at a time. So it would be all 26 of those first graders in the classroom with their teacher, but they constitute a cohort. Okay, and all the cohorting rules still apply in terms of how many adults they contact and the fact that we will keep them from mixing with other groups of children.
That's kind of what I thought. Thanks. And then my last question, it seems like we have this kind of place where we're going to be, I think, be seeing some more positive results coming out of the university. I don't know that there's anything we can do about that, but I'm just curious, how do the university rates when they go up impact our ability to go forward with our plans?
I'm happy to take that. Thank you, Kathy. And we are watching that extremely closely. With the framework that I talked about in those measures, we know that if we have a lot more students from the university showing up positive, that it will impact our ability to move forward. We're working really closely with the university. And I want to give one other sort of scenario, just so you know how we're thinking about this. We don't know exactly what's happening with all the university students yet. So we don't know if the exposures have stayed only on campus, as an example, or if they're off campus. If this was an outbreak in the jail, we could still have potentially a indicator in one of those areas, but if we knew it was totally contained within the jail, we could still move forward. With the University of Colorado, until those case investigations are completed, we won't know for sure what we will be assessed day as we move forward, and we will be sure that how that's playing out.
Yeah, the students tend to like not stay on campus, which would make things a lot easier. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Tina.
Okay, Donna, do you have some questions? Donna? All right, I'll come back in case we get reconnected. Kitty.
Okay, I don't have much, but one question I have has nothing to do with the presentation, but it's for Dr. Zayak. Every day in the camera, I see Boulder County has this many cases and CU has that many. Are those separate or are they together?
Those cases are together, but CU has made a commitment to track those on their website independently to be transparent with the community about how many cases are coming from CU specifically. But that is included in our total number. So when I present data to you, that includes both the CU cases and.
Well, that's relieving. I'm glad to hear that. And then I had a question about scheduling outdoor activities. Is that just for the kids who are going to be back in person, or would that be for older kids as well?
For the outdoor activities, that would be any students K through 12.
Okay. Thank you. And the only other thing about transportation is that after the last meeting, I got an email from Allison Billings from Impact on Education, and she is going to look into whether or not they would be able to provide bikes, because that was something I brought up is, if people can't ride the bus, maybe they could have a bike. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's a possibility. And that is all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you. Well, first, I have to say, as the parent of a first grader, that we are just so enthusiastic. My 7-year-old actually snuck in while we were giving this presentation and said he just wanted to check and make sure we were still going to let him go back to school. So that's the level of enthusiasm that we have here. So thank you to everybody for making this happen. I think I have 3 questions. First, I'm wondering about the Color Me Smart program, which I think is closed at most of our schools, most of our Boulder sites. And I'm thinking that our K through 2 students are the ones most likely to have a Color Me Smart age sibling. So are we thinking about reopening any of those programs?
I'm not sure if I'll have to probably get back to you on the specificity on the Color Me Smart program. I do not know that Renee is on the call or if we've had that discussion yet on where we're going to be with that. So if you let me, I'll get back to you on that, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm wondering about, on the one hand, students or pods who don't want to attend in person and what their options are going to be. Is it only the Reva system, or do they also have the option to go to the online teacher for their grade? And then as a corollary to that, what happens with kids who are maybe thought that they wanted to do online learning and are with an online only teacher and who decide that they do want to attend in person after all?
Yeah, great question. So we've been thinking a lot about that, and we're aware that for those students that are choosing an online option instead of coming back to us in person, that we want to ensure that they have the best possible online experience that we can give them. So it will be some combination of the Reva system as well as potentially some support from our exempt staff to support their learning and ensure that they're moving along. And we're hoping that for most of our students who have selected online only, they will be assigned to an exempt teacher. So that exempt teacher will be able to really shepherd their learning through the next steps. There are a few cases where we are going to have some K-2 teachers that have both online and in-person students. And we're reaching out specifically to those teachers to see what kind of support that they're going to need to be able to operate in this environment and to do that effectively. We will be sending out a message to parents in the next couple days that will ask them to update their preference for online or in person. And we certainly want to honor that if there are people that are not feeling safe sending their K-2 kids back to in person, or their kids in intensive programs back to in person, that they can absolutely change from in person to online. We definitely want to honor that. With our parents that would like to move back to in person, we're going to ask them to work with us on a timeline for that, to make sure that we have space for them and that we can make that happen, since we've been planning this entire transition to phase 2+ based on selections that people had already made.
Okay, thank you so much. That sounds great. And then my last question is for public health. I'm wondering about, is a single primary indicator changing? Is that enough to cause a change in learning mode? Or are we looking, I think we're looking at all the indicators sort of comprehensively and trying to decide based on all the factors when a change would need to occur. And if that's the case, I'm wondering if you could give maybe more detail about what kinds of things would cause an overall change.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. It could be one thing. So ideally what we don't want is we don't want anything to be in the red, because that really pushes us towards a warning of we really need to be thoughtful about if we're going to move into something where we have in person. Let me give you an example of that, and then I would ask Dr. Urbina to add anything that might help illustrate this point as well. But if we could have very high case counts that were largely community spread. So get your mind out of CU, out of long-term care facility, or out of a jail type situation. And CU could result in more community spread. We just don't know yet. But if we start to see a lot of cases showing up in the general community and we could not pinpoint where those cases were coming from, and it was difficult to tell how people were contracting the virus, as that indicates that there could be more generalized community-wide spread. We would not want to be in that kind of scenario with a lot of cases. Part of the reason why we chose 14-day metrics is so we weren't being back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. A 14-day metric felt like it was the right metric to go with and still be responsive enough to respond to some of the things that we're seeing in the community. And I'll stop there and see if Dr. doesn't look like he does, right, Chris?
Sure, I always have an opinion, Jeff. I think the question's right on, and that's why we have metrics, and that's why we have a close partnership with Heather, our epidemiologist, Soda, and Stephanie and Rob, all working together. So we're watching the outbreak very closely. We're watching our numbers very closely so that we have early indicators to make corrections, and we have enough case and contact tracers and people who follow the rules that we can be assured that this is going to be a safer go back to school. So we wouldn't want to step backwards. We would only want to go forward. And maybe I can ask Heather to add a few cents as well in terms of how we're going to be monitoring this in the schools and working with Stephanie and her team.
Sure, thank you, Chris. I think to Jeff and Dr. Urbina's points that it will likely depend on which of the indicators is maybe not falling into the ideal or the green area. And so it's really going to be kind of an overview, an overall look at the county. And again, if we have one indicator that's over in the red, that might be telling us it's not okay to be in person at that moment. But we are watching these indicators weekly over a 14-day period. And so we will see when there's shifts happening and be able to communicate that with our school partners.
Okay, well, thank you so much to the three of you and to Public Health for the incredible hard work and partnership and helping us find ways to get back to school. I think the only thing I want to say is, as excited as we are about getting back to school, and we are very excited, I do want to mention that the work so far this semester has been incredible. The teachers, our principal, our school, just everybody has done a phenomenal job of giving a remote learning experience for a first grader that's not only far exceeds what we had in the spring, but far exceeds, I think, the expectations I had going into this fall. So just thank you so much to everybody in our district and at my school for the incredible work I've seen.
Okay, Donna.
Yeah, thank you. Especially I want to reiterate, thanks to the teachers. They're all working hard, and many of them are concerned about the reentry plan. And so this question comes from more than one teacher. Is there going to be planning time for the teachers to go in to get their classrooms ready for the safety measures that the district is implementing? That's one question.
Great question, Donna. And we've made the decision at the recommendation of our elementary principals, actually, to take the professional learning day on September 21st, which was going to be a district professional learning day for everybody, and allow our K-2 teachers to be exempt from the professional learning on that day, to use that time as work time to prep their classrooms.
Okay, thanks for answering that. Another question is, some parents were under the misconception, and I think the problem is, as parents have emailed me during this meeting or messaged me, some parents, we had made an announcement, and I wanted to make sure I'm correct on this, that the announcement would be made on the 22nd. Some people were thinking they were coming back on the 22nd, but from tonight's presentation, it looks like the reentry starts on the 29th. Is that correct?
That is correct, Donna. The first day for in-person learning for our students in K-2 and our intensive programs would be on September 29th.
Okay, and the last question, and thank you for the clarifications, because people are standing by waiting for those. Some of the teachers at the Transition Center for 18 to 21, and this may be a specific question that you'll have to get back to us on. When we start the cohorts and they're going in for 2 days a week, then I'm assuming they're online for 2 days a week. Are they supposed to not only have those cohorts in that transition center, is that the plan, to be in 2 days a week and online 2 days a week? And then I'll just throw this in, because I've seen this working in other school districts. In addition to that question, I know we've set up a lot of the remote cameras for teachers to be videoed as they're giving instruction. Are the online kids going to have access to that through their online learning, what's going on in the classroom real time? Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
So Donna, I'm happy to speak to your question around students on IEPs and specifically in transitions. So you are right, the students in our transitions program will be included in the 2 day per week cohort, and they will have access to, at this point, limited community experiences. As you can imagine, we are being extremely careful in thinking about moving forward with our students in the community. And we actually have had several community organizations reach out who are interested in resuming our relationship and our activities with our students in the transition program. So we are currently working on developing what that could look like. And of course, with our priority being alignment with the health and safety protocols.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Donna. Are you all set, Donna?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see, Kitty. Whoops, I already did Kitty. Stacy, sorry.
Thanks for all the information and the presentation. My question is, I'm hoping you can shed some light on this because I'm a little confused. The phase 2 plus seems to be more aggressive than what our phase 3 was going to be at the K through 12 levels. They were going to go back in cohorts only 2 days a week, but now they're going back 4 days a week with no smaller cohort groups. And so I'm just curious about that. And then the other thing about the cohort groups, my question is, I thought part of it not just was number smaller. And so it seems now that keeping the group smaller isn't applicable. Is that true? Like, I'm just confused about, it seems a lot more aggressive than what the phase 3 was going to be, and it's a phase 2. And I know it's just a smaller, it's K through 2, not everybody. But I'm wondering if you can maybe shed some light on that.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy, for that question, because I think a lot of people probably have that question. The rationale for having us go back 4 days at K2 is a couple different reasons. So one, because we really decided to focus our efforts on that age range of kids. We still only have half the kids in the building that would normally be there. One of the reasons that we decided to have them go back 4 days and be with their teacher for the entire day is that actually we were getting a lot of concerns from teachers about having to teach both in person and online to kids in 2 different cohorts at the same time. That was a big concern. And I had a lot of conversations with Terry Mulford about that. And for many reasons, I think that actually moving to this model allows our teachers to be more effective. And it's still well within the range of what public health would allow us to do, and well within what the CDC guidelines recommend.
And if I could just add, Sam, also from an infection prevention standpoint, having students in a known location 4 days a week versus potentially being dropped at a relative's house or a neighbor's house or a sitter, from an infection prevention standpoint, is lower risk, knowing that they're in a setting with their particular cohort for that time. And so that was a discussion that we had as well.
Stacy, do you have any other questions?
I do. One of my questions is, and I'm not sure you can answer it, but I'm just curious, that 85% of the task force agreed to this, and I'm curious about the other 15. Did they think K through 12 should go back? Did they think no one should go back? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, we had a couple people who abstained and decided not to weigh in. We had one person who said that they could not support the proposal. They did not give a reason.
Okay. And was the proposal just to focus on K through 12, or was the proposal what we saw today?
The proposal was what you saw today. So it included the pieces about students in the intensive programs, the opening up the outdoor opportunities for students at all grade levels, going to K through 5 at our 2 small mountain schools, and going to essentially what looks like a phase 3 at our Boulder Tech campus.
And were the details that we got today part of that as well?
We did not have all the details ready, and we tried to be clear about that in that proposal, that we were still working out the details of what schedules would look like, et cetera.
Okay, great. And then my last question is about the outdoor learning also. I'm wondering, for those who aren't going back, the outdoor learning would have to fit into whatever their schedule is remotely. And so I'm wondering if some of these opportunities might happen outside of the school day. Otherwise, I'm not so sure how a teacher could actually do that if someone has to be in front of their high school, for example, in front of their computer for a 3rd period, but then an outdoor learning experience for 4th period or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think that we are still exploring what the range of opportunities could look like for the use of our outdoor classrooms. And I think there are all kinds of ways that this could look. One might be for a teacher to do a meeting with their entire class outside, but it also could be used for like one-on-one appointments with a counselor to talk about a student's course schedule for, you know, the upcoming semester or their college applications that are underway. So I think there's a huge range of types of activities that could happen in those outdoor settings. And we've got great resources in the community to support us with that. There's a national working group that's looking at the use of outdoor spaces during the pandemic. And there are 2 members of that national working group who are in our community. One of them is Gita Carroll, our sustainability director.
Great. Thanks for answering all my questions, and thanks for all the hard work. I know it's not been easy and it's hard to make everybody happy. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, and I'll just extend my thanks as well for all the hard work, and know that we'll continue to have questions as this rolls out and we understand how we all feel about this proposal, and we'll continue to work on the problems that come up over time. So with that, if it's okay, I'd like to move on to our next item, unless anyone needs a break. Everyone good? All right, so our next item is information item number 2, an update on BVSD's Equity Council.
Thanks, Tina. And I'll invite Landon Mascarenas and Mike Grados to present our update on where we are with our Equity Council. I know a lot of great work has been happening, lots of incredible interest from our community on being involved. And so, Mike, I'll hand it over to you if that works.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson, President Marquis, members of the board. Good evening, and thanks for having us to give that opportunity to give you an update on where we are with the Equity Council. It's exciting, and yet I know in news and notes we let you know that we had about 800, almost 900 applicants wanting to be on the Equity Council. So CEI, the Colorado Education Initiative, going through all of those has been quite a chore and a task. So we had to delay our first meeting by 1 week. So I hope that's understandable. But tonight, what we'll do is give you an update on what that looks like with the other 2 selection processes around the recommendations and the random selection. So Landon's got a presentation he'd like to share with you, and then we'll take questions. So Landon, I'll hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Hope everyone's had a wonderful 3-day weekend. Thank you, Board President Marquis, members of the board. Thank you, Superintendent Anderson. This is a really great opportunity. We're really thrilled at CEI to be working with all the staff members at BVSD on this really important initiative. I'd love to walk you through a few slides that we put together to give you a little bit of an insight into where we're currently at on the Equity Council process. And would love to then just open it up for any questions or comments from there. Oh. Wonderful. So just a few things here. Reviewing the purpose on the Equity Council, we'll give you an update on the membership. We'll talk a little bit about the arc of the Equity Council over the course of the at least first term, taking on the issue of school resource officers. We'll talk a little bit about Board of Education engagement and then some next steps from there. Again, a reminder of the team. My name is Landon Mascarenas. I'm a vice president of the Colorado Education Initiative, and I'm the lead partner with BVSD on this project, which means I get the incredible opportunity to work with your staff, and I just have nothing but positive things to say about all the ways that they've come together, working with us and with their community over the course of the past few weeks here to set up the Equity Council. And as we get started with our launch next week, I'm really excited for our entire team to come together to support the Boulder Valley community. As a reminder, the Equity Council is a long-term effort to bring community, families, and the students of Boulder Valley into a conversation around equity and looking at important decisions and conversations around equity as it relates to the work of Boulder Valley School District. Yes, our first topic will be taking on the issue of school resource officers, but as you've heard from Superintendent Anderson and Mike Grados, it's an opportunity to really build that co-creation and co-production with the larger community around an equity lens. And as Mike mentioned just a moment ago, given the incredible interest and passion from your community around equity, we initially were thinking our launch would be, the first meeting would be tomorrow, but we've moved it to next week to accommodate the additional time required to ensure we are vetting all applicants in a thoughtful and a thoughtful approach. As a reminder, again, there are 3 ways that we are building the membership of the Equity Council. First is district selection and recruitment. These are community and advocacy leaders selected by the district. And these are members that are community members, district leaders, people that BVSD has said, you know what, we got to make sure no matter what we do, this group of people is on the Equity Council because they represent a really important set of voices in our community. We also, and this is an innovation that I've done in some communities places I've had a chance to work, is we also believe it's important to bring people into the process that may have never been a part of the process before. And so we've worked with Jonathan Dings to randomly select a group of families and students and do outreach with them to recruit them into the process. And that's been a really inspiring thing to hear about the family members naming, you know what, I never would have applied for this, but I'm really interested in being a part of it. And I thank you so much for reaching out. And then, of course, we have the open recruitment process, which is an application posted online with the opportunity to for anyone eligible in your broader community to be a part of. And as of the close of business on Thursday, we've had 874 applications for that process. And now our goal is around 30 members from across all 3 of these categories. And so first off, I commend you on opening up an application and seeing this kind of passion. As having gone through many of the applications myself, I can tell you the passion for equity in the Boulder community is really inspiring. And the group of people that have shown interest in this process is something that you should all be really proud of. And I think that we'll talk a little bit about in this presentation how we want to make sure that their energy, passion, and commitment is an ongoing opportunity for Boulder Valley. Let's just take a look at the applicants that we received by the close of business Thursday. You can see the applicants across the board here, predominantly white, but a significant amount of applicants from a variety of different backgrounds, self-identified, of course. And as a reminder, also, many of these applicants could identify as multiple as a part of this background and process as well. This is also an analysis of the different types of stakeholder identification, the way that they identified. As a reminder, also, people could identify as multiple stakeholder groups in the process as well. But here we can see that a significant amount of parents, community members, and students, and man, the student applications are inspiring. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible student speakers that spoke earlier in the conversation today around a really critical equity issue of opening up a conversation around curriculum, textbooks, literature. The passion of students in BVSD is something to be admired, and we're really looking forward to getting student voice on the Equity Council. There's been a conversation about, how are we building the membership of the Equity Council of those applicants. In the open recruitment, we are first assessing in their statement of purpose if they've articulated interest in diversity and equity and appreciation for difference and leading to actually better outcomes and decision making in a process. That they understand the needs and challenges faced by underrepresented individuals and intend to be an advocate that would identify and enhance the equity and inclusion of the school system. And as we go through that process, inevitably we're going to be having some folks who are not selected, which is given that we have 900 applicants. But through conversations with different members of the Boulder Valley district staff members, including Mike and Randy, we've been talking about what would it mean for us to harness some of this energy in the process and ongoing in Boulder. First, we're thinking actually for all the folks, we're going to be asking them to maybe send us a video or a letter about what equity means to them and what they think about SROs in schools, so we can share and collect this with the Equity Council once it's seated. We will use email communication to keep them in the loop. I spoke with Ari, the head of family partnership and equity today, and he thinks there's a great opportunity to steer them toward other equity opportunities that are present in the district and other opportunities for them to share their voice. And as the Equity Council creates opportunities and proposals about the SRO issue, maybe there's an opportunity for this group to give feedback on some of those ideas, especially if people are particularly passionate or affected by the issue at hand. And as Equity Councils take on additional issues over the course of the year, what a great opportunity to keep people involved in the process. And then maybe there's opportunities at a school level around conversations around equity. And this group of folks can be a really great resource to tap into as different schools and communities, given the amount of parents that shared they have a passion for this issue. I'm going to share a little bit about the kind of overview of the scope and sequence that we're going to be taking on. I apologize for the size of the slides. I know that this can be shared with you afterwards. But at our meeting next week, we're really going to be talking about what are our norms of operation, how are we going to hold equity at the center, a timeline for our action. We're going to share personal stories, and we're going to talk about different narratives and visions of success around equity in BVSD so that every member of the council can share their perspectives and challenges they've had around equity from their perspective. At the meeting on the 23rd, we're going to be hearing from SROs and district staff and folks who work on restorative practices. This is going to allow our Equity Council to, in their second meeting, get deeply embedded in the opportunity and understanding of the Equity Council as a broader issue. We'll then move on to a set of whole group, small group reflections and additional information as needed over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks that will allow the Equity Council to gain an emergent sense of what they believe could be the recommendations and path forward as it relates to the SRO issue. They will present these recommendations to you all and to the superintendent, get your feedback on these issues, and then revise them in accordance with the feedback and what they believe is right. And then in a meeting probably around toward the end of October, the group will step back on this first set of processes, the first 5 weeks of work, which will be a very intensive weekly sprint, but they're going to build a lot of connection and questions about what's to take on next. And so we want to step back and then think about what it will take to move forward from there. I know this also was shared with you recently, but wanted to also talk about how you'll remain involved and deeply engaged as a board. We know that next week you're going to be hearing some presentation on SRO and discipline data from Jonathan Dings. And then you're going to be hearing about the Equity Council recommendations in mid-October, then work session around those recommendations, and then any action on any recommendations toward the end of October. But I know that you have this information already in your materials as well. And so with that, I'll step back for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming up with some neat ways to engage people who were looking to be a part of this effort, knowing that we can't accommodate everyone in this particular session. That's really great to hear. Richard, do you have any questions?
Thanks, Landon. Great presentation. A lot of work. I don't envy your position in terms of trying to select. Is it 10 members out of 900 applications? I don't know what it is, but
it'll be between 10 and 20 probably from that group. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that are going to be disappointed because they didn't get on it probably. I just have one question, and my question is in reference to some of the data that we saw earlier of kids being arrested and over the past 3 years, et cetera. Is there going to be any attempt to try and find any of these particular kids that have gone through this particular process, the judicial process, that have been ticketed, and to hear what their experiences have been? Is that part of the process that you have in mind?
I'll share a couple of thoughts, and then Mike would love to get your thoughts on as well. I think that that's something I definitely think that the Equity Council could be interested in looking into. And, one of the things that we've definitely tagged over the course of the process is them to hear from students, community members who have been impacted by SROs. And so the scope of which the Equity Council wants to learn more about that specifically from an individual's experience, I think we'll keep an open mind around, but I definitely think that could be on the table. And Mike, any thoughts there?
Yes, totally agree. But I think even from the selection process of the applicants, of the students we had from both random and the application would tell us, because when they answered the question about equity, I think there'll be some evidence in there that tells us that there was an experience. So that could be helpful.
The reason I'm asking the question, Landon and Mike, is that we heard from the one SRO, and he he painted a very beautiful picture in terms of what an SRO is. And I just want to make sure that we hear the other side, not just that side, so that at least we can have a fair representation in terms of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I agree, Richard. Having another side of that would be very helpful. The question would be is who's willing to tell that story, and that's something that'll be difficult to find. So we'll do our best to see what we can get, even if it comes from someone else, and to tell that story would give us information.
Thank you. That's all I got, Tina.
Okay, Kathy.
I just want to echo what Richard said. Thank you, Landon. My biggest concern when I saw the number of applicants was how do we keep those people engaged? Because we haven't seen that level of interest in an issue for a long time. So thank you for thinking creatively about how to do that. And I look forward to trying to figure out how we keep our whole community engaged as we do this equity walk. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Donna? Donna, are you there? Okay, we can circle back. Kitty. Kitty?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't have any questions. Just thank you again. This sounds like it's going to be wonderful, and I'm really excited about it.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for bringing all that up. I do think it's difficult to find folks who are willing to come forward often and talk about their experiences. But I also think in the last few months, I've had the opportunity to speak with dozens of parents and caseworkers who've had a lot of stories to tell. So I would be very happy to talk to Landon maybe about finding ways to connect folks who are willing to share their story with Equity Council and to get some of those things passed on.
I'd love that.
Okay, Stacy, any questions?
No questions, just thank you for the presentation, and it's really encouraging that there were that many applications, and I'm glad we're going to try and keep them engaged.
All right, this was great. Thank you so much. And I am glad you got to hear our students speak at the beginning. That was just really good timing. All right, so our next item is number 3, the strategic plan update. So
thanks, Tina. We're going to have Sam Messier is going to present once again on the kind of strategic plan update on where we are, give you and the public some update on some of the outcomes that we've been working towards over the course of the past year. So, Sam, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, President Marquis, members of the board. Dr. Anderson, happy to present to you tonight a little bit about the strategic plan. Just a reminder that we still have a strategic plan that's going on ahead and that we're working on even as we continue to work on our reintroduction. So we wanted to highlight tonight in this update a couple of initiatives that we've accelerated to support the successful launch of the 2020-2021 school year. The first of those, so I'm just going to highlight several outcomes that we've achieved. The first of those outcomes is around safe and secure environment. So we've been doing a lot of work over the last year that I know all of you are aware of around bullying prevention, including some expanded professional learning for our staff, as well as the development of curriculum around bullying prevention, which will be delivered at the elementary level by our elementary counselors and in our health classes at the secondary level. As you know, you approved a bullying prevention policy back in June of 2020. And we've also developed, to go with that, some guidelines for our administrators around investigating and responding to bullying complaints. In addition, thanks to the hard work of our safety and security team, our student support services team, and Kathleen Sullivan and our legal team, we've updated our discipline policies and practices, created a discipline matrix, and done an in-depth training for our administrators on the safety vortex, which included a wide range of topics, and which will be followed by additional training and data reviews for our administrators over the next several months. The second outcome is the prioritized standards. These prioritized standards were really an essential step in us being able to create some of the resources that we created and provided to our teachers at the beginning of this year. Up to this point, we have provided professional learning on the prioritized standards for our teachers. And we have done the prioritization process now for our elementary areas, as well as our secondary core content areas. And then in the next phase, we'll be moving on to do this prioritization in the elective areas at secondary. The third outcome is around our culturally responsive framework. So this work has included a wide range of activities, including the development of this culturally responsive framework, but also including the work that Mike Grados and his team in human resources have been doing on hiring and retention of staff, all of our work around the bullying policies. In addition, some of the work that we've been doing more recently with our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools to increase the enrollment of students in underrepresented groups in our advanced courses. Work that we're undertaking with Johns Hopkins University to do an audit of our curriculum to look at the representation of a variety of groups in that curriculum, as well as the content. And most importantly, and I think part of the work that has been incredibly impactful for the units that we created to support teachers this fall is the embedding of these culturally responsive practices into our instructional infrastructure. So as we had folks developing units, we really had them think about questions like, how will I interpret the standard in a culturally and linguistically responsive way? And how will I ensure that the perspectives of those in traditionally marginalized communities are represented in authentic and respectful ways? And these were necessary questions that we asked every unit developer who created a unit to answer, and to answer explicitly so that we could provide guidance in this area to our teachers. The fourth outcome is the development of a common instructional model for our district. So up to this point, the team has researched instructional practices, developed this common instructional model, and led the development of units that combine this instructional model with our culturally responsive framework and our standards. So while this instructional model, I think, can look really simple at the surface level, it really serves as the foundation for our vocabulary of how we talk about instruction in BVSD. And this is the first time in my history in BVSD, and I've been here 15 years, that I know of that we've actually committed to a common instructional model to serve as the basis of how we talk about instruction across all content areas and across all grade levels throughout our district. This is a powerful move for uniting us around a way to talk about instruction. And I think it'll really support our teachers. We're also using it as the guidance for how we construct our professional learning sessions for teachers so that we're really walking the walk as well as talking the talk. The fifth outcome around unit development, I've talked about this before, so I won't dwell on it, but consists of building units for all grade levels and then embedding those with tools to support online and blended learning instruction so that we make sure that we're providing robust support supports to our teachers, no matter what phase of reintroduction that we're in. And then the final outcome is making sure that all of these resources that have been created to support our instructional infrastructure are readily accessible to our educators. So we have launched our Instruction in BBSD website, which provides a one-stop shop for teachers to access those prioritized standards, the resources, including the units and specific lessons, that instructional model, and our culturally responsive framework. And with that, I stand ready to accept your questions.
Okay, Richard, do you want to start?
No, I just want to thank Sam. Sam, that was a great presentation and a great update on where we're at. Thank you very much.
Kathy?
Can you just talk a little bit more, Sam, about the common, and you were saying that it's the biggest step forward in your 15 years. I just was hoping you could put a little more meat on that one. It sounds really exciting. I would just love to know a little bit more.
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Kathy. It's really exciting to me that we've finally committed to a common instructional model. So in the past, I think we've had some really strong instructional models that have guided specific content areas. So we've always had, I think, a strong literacy instruction framework, but that's been unique to literacy. We've had a strong model for elementary mathematics instruction, but that's been unique to elementary mathematics instruction. And so that means that we've had these pockets of how we're talking about instruction in different ways. This is really the first time I'm aware of that we have everybody across all contents and across all grade levels using the same language to talk about how you construct a sequence of lessons to really build up to the development of understanding for students. So really starting with that engagement of the learning by really establishing relevance and sparking kids' interest, then moving on to really being very explicit about the learning goals and ensuring that students can articulate those learning goals in their own words. Then starting to build the knowledge through guided learning activities, giving students opportunities to reflect on that learning, and then finally culminating in students having opportunities using a variety of modalities to demonstrate that understanding. And so now this is this powerful opportunity for when we bring educators together to collaborate, they have the same framework within which to have those conversations.
Sounds really exciting. Thanks. I don't have any other questions, Tina.
Okay, I think Donna dropped off, so we can move over to Kitty.
Okay, I unmuted already. I don't have any questions either. Oh, is that a cat?
Yes, it is a cat. Sorry.
Well, I think this is the first time my cat hasn't appeared at a meeting. But thanks so much for that. It really is exciting. And so good work. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Sam. That all looked really fantastic.
Stacy?
Same. Thanks, Sam. That was great.
Yep, I echo the same. I think that this is, I have not been here for 15 years on the board, but I've been 7 on the board and maybe 6 on DAC. So I think from my perspective as well, this is a huge step forward and something that we've been needing for a long time, while recognizing we've done a great job for years, but this is really a step up. Rob, sorry.
Thanks, Tina. And I just wanted to commend our team. When we think how far we've come in just 2 years, want to commend this board for supporting and helping us develop what I think is just an incredible strategic plan. And plans, I think that the knock on strategic plans is oftentimes they sit on a shelf. They come these big ideas where things don't actually happen. And I'm just incredibly proud of our team, work that we did together with our teachers, with our leaders. I think that presentations like this are important just to highlight that things are happening. Our instructional infrastructure is improving. And as Sam shared, it will allow us to not only speak the same language, make sure that we're using research-based best practices, but also allows us to align and design the teacher development, professional development around that. And so just want to thank the board for continuing to support our strategy. I want to thank our team for what I think is tremendous progress even in pandemic. And our team, I think everyone on this board knows and understands that we continue to work hard along with our teachers. So just really proud moment to see these things coming together and really providing an infrastructure we need to support teachers and support kids.
Okay, thank you. And so our next item is a legislative update, but given that we had the legislative platform discussion, I think we can skip that. Is everyone okay with that? Great. So if I can, I'd like to move on to our consent grouping. So our action items are 7.1 personnel items, 7.2 approval of minutes, August 25th, 2020 special meeting, 7.3 approval of minutes, August 25th, 2020 regular meeting. Are there any items a board member would like to pull? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the items? Moved by Kathy, seconded by Stacy. All right, and Laura, would you please call the roll? I'm sorry, any questions? Okay, Laura, would you please call the roll?
I shall. Garcia.
Yes.
Gephardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers. Not present. Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zess.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, our final action item is the appointment of voting delegate to CASB's delegate assembly. And for those who weren't here last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, the Colorado Association of School Board Members holds an assembly every year to solidify what their resolutions will be for their advocacy to the legislature. And just a reminder, the school board also has a lobbyist, and we do some advocacy independently from CASB as well. So we send one person from our school board to go represent our delegate, or to represent our district. Is there anyone who's interested in serving in this capacity? Okay, Kitty is interested. Is anyone else interested?
Tina, I would just say that Stacy and I will probably be watching as board members of CASB, but we won't be voting.
Fantastic, even better. Okay, so if we have no other nominations, or I'm sorry, people interested, can we have someone nominate Kitty to be our delegate?
So
Nominated
moved.
by Kathy. Oh,
Second.
Second by Richard. Okay, and Laura, would you please call the roll? The vote, sorry.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gephardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers is not present. Sargent.
No, wait, I mean, yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zess.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then and our real final action are CASB resolutions. Okay, so this is our opportunity to introduce a new resolution to CASB to be discussed at the Delegate Assembly, where we will be dutifully represented by Kitty. Does anyone have a resolution they wanted to offer to for us to present at the Delegate Assembly?
I just have a question, Kitty and Tina, and that is, should we say anything about special education, or is it enough that we have it as a standing resolution where we talk about special education funding? As we talked about on our legislative platform, I think we keep it simple this session, because I think there's going to be so much budget cutting and conversation around money that I don't know that we really want to put much more out there. That's my gut.
And are we going, the ones we talked about last time, we had 3 things, right? We had repealing Claire Davis, and what were the other 2?
Funding.
Yeah.
And vouchers and tax credits, is that what we were doing?
Yeah, I think that was it. And I agree with Kathy. I think it's a good idea to keep it to a minimum. I mean, we'll probably still end up with a phone book's worth of resolutions when you get all of the school districts in there, but.
So do you want to explain to our younger audience what a phone book is, Kitty?
It's a place where if your goes out, you could actually open a book and find a phone number. It's amazing. They should have thought this a long time ago.
And it still works if you drop it on the floor.
Right, and my daughter says it still works if you drop it on the floor.
So let's
So are we okay on the special education not doing anything? What do you think?
Well, I thought we were going to keep that as a,
It's in the standing resolution, so it might be enough.
yeah.
I mean, I would just suggest that that Kitty to follow our legislative platform at this point, and I think we'd be okay.
The forms.
Hmm?
You know, there's a template that Kathy has. You want me to do that? Or who does that?
Kathy does.
Okay.
Kathy, what's the story on that?
I know I didn't do it last year. It just sort of appeared.
Kathleen might be able to tell me about this. I don't remember a form like that before. I remember we just had to submit a draft resolution.
Right, but this year they have this template.
I know.
It out. You can see it right here.
Well, Kitty, are you okay doing it with our 3 things that we talked about? Claire Davis funding and no public money going to private institutions?
Because I can look at language from other ones to get the idea of how to write that. But it's due Thursday.
Well, and I think you can use from the legislative platform, the funding piece would be the 2.1 under finance, and then I believe the voucher was 2.11.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I can remember. And then I think that we have the Claire Davis in there as well. So I think that we can, because those are known platforms that we've discussed publicly, we can use those as the basis for the resolutions. Does that sound right?
Sounds okay to me.
Is everyone okay
At
with
some
that?
point, Kitty, they will reach out to you if those are duplicative of others to see if we can join them together, but that's a process downstream.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we should be fine joining them as long as there's nothing lost in it. That's at least my opinion. The fewer resolutions, the better.
Okay, and then Laura, do we need to vote on those 3 items? I mean, it's difficult because they're not finalized.
Well, I mean, the Claire Davis is pretty much, we support the repeal of the Claire Davis.
Right. And I think it's actually in our legislative platform. We've already voted on it in that capacity.
Kathleen, do they need to vote on anything?
No, you really don't. This is not an official action that you're going to be able to implement. This is really encouraging CASB to take these advocacy positions. So I think the kind of conversation and consensus you had is all you need to do.
Okay. Does everyone feel okay about that? Great. Any other questions about the CASB Delegate Assembly? Okay, so then our last item is agenda setting. Does anyone have anything new they'd like to introduce right now for the future?
Are you daring us, Tina?
Come on, just do it. All right. If it's okay, then I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so let's adjourn. Thank you so much for everyone's time. Have a good night. Enjoy the snow.